And hello everyone, welcome back to another Meteor.js tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be looking at our user profile page as well as uploading images to AWS S3. Now just a quick disclaimer, if you do not want to use AWS because money issues, that's perfectly fine. You can completely skip this whole section or even replace AWS with something you'd prefer, maybe a free service. Take note, however, what we'll be doing won't really infer a lot of costs, probably around 1 cent. So if you're okay with that, feel free to follow along. So let's start off by creating a user profile page. So here we can go to our imports, not known modules, imports, UI. And here we can say user profile page with an index.tsx and the usual component. Now we can make sure that we can actually access this by doing two things. The first is going to our routes, and in here we need to make sure that our user profile is actually viewable. So right here underneath sign up, let's just copy paste, go user profile, and this will be /profile /username. So anyone that has this URL, which is /profile and then a person's username, will be able to view their profile, including you yourself. This will of course be profile page, and you can just save that. Then here in the route renderer, we can just see, so here's the your profile section. So it has a profile icon. So if we were to actually start this, then here, your profile, if we click it, it doesn't really take us anywhere, so we're going to have to implement that. So here with the on click, we simply say navigate public routes dot user profile dot path, and we simply need to replace that colon username right there with the actual person's username. So dot replace colon username with user profile dot username. As simple as that. Now if we go here and we say your profile, it takes us to the hello world we have here. So here on the user profile page, we can confirm that we actually get the user ID by extending basic site props, which will give us access to the user ID in case we need it later. Now we can get the username from the URL by going const is equal to use params from Wouter. And in here we just simply specify all of the items we want, like username. And these are what is found inside of the URL. So this right here, that is what we're fetching here. So let's do our general fetching. So let's go here and say use state loading. And we'll make it true by default. We can import use state and also use state user. And this user model will of course be fitted to work with our user profile page. So interface, and we of course can choose this and say mini model, and this extends pick user profile model, and we just need the ID, user ID, first name, last name, and photo. Optionally, you can also get the username from here, but we already have the username, so it's up to you which you decide. And this user ID here is specific because these two may not be the same. This is the user ID of the person who is logged in. This is the user ID of the profile they are looking at. They may not be the same, so just make sure you understand that. Then of course we can just do our usual const, make this fields, go mini, and then we just simply paste all of these in here and give them a 1. And just to make sure this works with the whole site with how it is built, we should just specify this also for the user profile model. Alright, now here with the user we can specify this will be that mini user profile page user profile model or undefined. Then to implement fetching the user profile, it's simply just a const fetch user profile, and I'm going to go to the browse page. Yes, and I'm just going to copy this part right here. Simply say if not username, then just return don't worry, and then here we paste what we just copied, and then at the end you could return undefined optionally, but it should return undefined on its own. Then here we just import all the missing imports, make sure we don't have any suspicious imports here. No, we're good. Then it's the user profile, but this time we search by the username, so username, the one that is passed in. This will of course be the mini fields we created. We need to import Meteor and then set user. You might want to call this user profile instead of user, since it is technically the user profile and not the user. And then just make sure we have the right things here, mini or undefined, and make sure this is only one true. And this is the wrong one, so let's just go mini. There we go. And here we can say could not get user profile. And as simple as that, we actually fetch the user data. Then if you want, you can also go here and copy this fetch data and this use effect, and actually this loading as well. And copy all of that and simply paste them here. And this will simply fetch user profile. We just say const user, save that there, and it will set the loading for us, and then we just import this use effect as well as this loading. As simple as that, we do fetch the data, and we can actually confirm we fetch it by going console.log user, and why not, let's go user ID. Now we go here, we open up our console, we do get an object which is Nick, first name, user ID, and underscore ID. Let's just give that a good refresh. I do, however, not see the username. Oh yeah, that's because we get the username here, my bad. So we do get the username, and it's up here as you can see. So let's start off by making a space with a direction of vertical and a style of width 100%. We can then add a typography.title, which will be of level 2, so about an H2, and this will contain the username. Next, we can check if the user ID, so this is the currently logged in user, is the same as the user.userid, so this is the profile we're viewing. If both of them are the same, then we can have another space here, and this can contain a typography.text, which is the user.firstname, as well as another typography.text, which is the user last name. Now if we view here, we see Nick and Nick. We do not see a last name because Nick does not have a last name. But if we were to view a different one, such as, is this Kali Linux? Let's go spoof our little thing here. Kali Linux. There we go. So we can just see this. We cannot see their actual name. And here we can, because this is our account. So let's implement updating our details before we go to actually creating a profile photo. So here I'm just going to create a new function, handle update user info, which is an asynchronous function, and it will take in two values. The first is going to be options, and this is going to be in enum. So enum available update user info options. It is optional if you want to use an enum. I just love using enums, so it's up to you which you prefer. But this will contain what we are updating. Will this be the username, the first name, or the last name? So here we can go username, first name, and last name. And then of course this will be of this. You could also alternatively make this a literal value, such as username or first name. It just depends on how you like to do it. I just love my enums. And then of course the value to what we're changing it, which will be of type string. In this case it works perfectly since all of their values will be of type string. So let's go to our API, our users, our methods, and our set methods. So here we have a create method, but we do not have an update method. So here we'll just go set.user, and this should be in the user profiles. Here method set, and let's just copy this. And here we say user profile dot update, and it will contain two values. First is the update being applied, and then the user ID. And we need to create a model for this. So if we go to our models, method or export interface method model, and just make sure that is Pascal case. The update will be of type partial user profile model. I actually recommend against doing this. So if you are one of those lazy developers, please don't really do this, because this actually has a couple downsides. This means any data that is passed into this update can just be shipped off to the backend. We don't want that. I'm going to use it as an example, but you should make a note for yourself. This is not good. What you should do instead is maybe go a pick route and pick what you want. So here you say you only want the first name, the last name, and whatnot. That might be a little bit better than specifying partial, which just allows everything and anything. And of course the user ID, which will be of type string. And this is the user who is being updated. This is because you might want to be an admin who changes someone else's details. So if they put some profanity in their name and you want to remove it, then you can if you're an admin. So you just take this right here, paste this right here, add that import. Then first let's do a check on the user ID. Make sure that is a string, and make sure to import check, otherwise you might get an error. And another check on update to be an object. And we're going to modify this a little bit because this check is not very secure. It just checks the type and not actually what is in the object. To do that, our workaround will be to go const allowed fields. This is the fields that are actually allowed, and we'll just say new set. We say first name, and take note of the casing. It's these casings here specifically. And let's just throw this here. So these are the fields that we allow updating. Whenever you want to update something else, you'll have to manually come in here and change it. This is just a little workaround because we don't want fields to be entered into the database just like that. So this is our little safeguard to make sure that, hey, if they're trying to add malicious data to their or someone else's user profile, then this will say, hey, this thing is not allowed in this method, please go away. We can then say const received fields will be object.keys, and this will come from update. We can get the invalid fields provided by going const invalid fields is equal to the received fields dot filter field and not allowed fields dot has field. So this will check if the allowed fields has this field that is in the received fields, or if it does not have it. So if these allowed fields does not have the field that we just received, then that means we received in field that is not allowed, and that will give us the invalid fields. Then we can simply check if invalid fields dot length is more than 0, return client content error, unexpected fields to update. And now here we can actually do the check. So check that update dot first name. You can make sure that that is a string, but it may actually not be provided in the update. So we need to make sure we give it an optional check. So match, which you need to import, dot optional, and there we go. Same for the rest, last name and username as well. Next, let's clean the username. So let cleaned username is equal to update dot username. So if we get that, we can say update dot username dot trim. If we don't get it, we can simply say undefined. Alternatively, you could have just put an optional operator here. Const cleaned first name, and it will follow the same pattern as this. So we just take that. This time we specify first name and cleaned last name. And here we go, last name, just to make sure they don't add unnecessary spaces into their names. We can then check if cleaned username was actually provided, meaning they did give us a username, and we should check if it's cleaned. We can make sure that this username follows the pattern it should always follow. So we can check if cleaned username at index 0 If that is an @ symbol, so if the user added their own @ symbol to the start, then we just remove that @ symbol by going clean the username is equal to clean the username dot slice 1. That will just remove the first character from this string. If clean username dot length is less than 3, we can give them a return client content error. Username is too short. Return. And finally, if not string contains only letters and numbers, clean username true. And this true is because if we want to allow an underscore, which we do in their username. So if it contains something outside of that, we can say return a client content error. Username may only contain letters, numbers, and underscore. You might want to add this to your signup, your user creation as well. Maybe even put this in a function so you can just add it wherever you need whenever something is being worked on with the username. And finally at the end, still in the if statement, we say cleaned username is equal to @ symbol cleaned username. Now we need to check that this username has not been taken. So const existing user is equal to await user profile collection dot find one async, where the username is the same as the cleaned username. So if an existing user was found, we can just say return client content error, username is already taken. So after we have worked with the username, we want to do the first name. We want to check that if the first name was provided, that it is not empty. So if cleaned first name and check string empty cleaned first name. So if they provided us with the first name, but they just send us an empty string, we have to tell them that, hey, your name is actually required. So just return client content error, first name is required. Now let's see if the user is actually allowed to update the username, and you might want to actually do this before you do any processing, just to save yourself some processing power by maybe doing it here after all of the checks. But just to follow along with the script, I'm going to continue down here. Const user is equal to await current user async. So we're getting the currently logged in user. If no user is logged in, then return no authorization error, because if you're not logged in, why are you trying to edit an account? We can then also check if user._id, if it's not the same as the user ID. So if the person who's trying to update their profile is not the same as the person updating the profile, so if Nick is trying to update the profile of Linux, of Kali Linux, then they should throw an error, and vice versa. Nick should only be allowed to update the profile of Nick. Same with Kali Linux. Unless you're an admin, which we have not implemented yet. So this here is mostly a placeholder because later admins will be able to bypass this. Just say return no auth error, because hey, you're not allowed to edit someone else's account details. Then you can go const current user is equal to the user ID. If that is the same as user._id, and again, this is for future reference for when we add admin powers. So if they are the same, and this should be 3 equal symbols, then the user. Otherwise, await get user by ID async user ID. So in this case, they would be an admin if we added an admin check up here, which we have not done yet, but will do in the future. We can then say if not current user. So if the user was simply not found, then we can say return not found error user account. Then down here we can finally implement the update. So const new update is equal to a partial, not equal, but type of partial user profile model, and it will contain the first name, which is the cleaned first name, the last name, which is the cleaned last name, as well as the user name, which is the cleaned username. And then at the end we say await user profile collection dot update async we specified the user ID, and then remember to use your set. If you don't use set, you will wipe some data you don't want to wipe. And we specify the new update. And there we go, we have just implemented the user update. We can now take this right here and go to our user profile page and say try catch, throw this here with meteor.call as sync, and up here with the data we can just say const data is of type method set user profile update model. It will contain the user ID, user.user ID, as well as the update, which will be of type, or not type, but which will be an object containing the option. So what we are trying to edit, the first name, the last name, the username. Make sure of the casing here, this is the same casing as what we use here. And this is why we do these extra checks on the back end as well, because here we don't want to write the extra code. You should write the extra code, but here I'm just showing that there are shorter methods of doing things, but writing the extra code would be safer. Then here we say value, and then we here just await this, pass in that data, and to get rid of this, we can just go here and say if not user, then we simply return a not found page with the message of username was not found, in case they try to search for someone who does not actually exist. And I will also fix this error, which was just because it didn't exist. If something happens, we can just return an error response, error as meteor.error, could not update profile. If it did update, we can give it a message.success, profile updated. Now, if their username changed, then this link, the URL they are on, will be invalid because their username changed. So we need to go if option was available options.username, then we can say let new username, that's equal to value, if new username at index 0 is not an @ symbol, then new username should become the new username but with an @ symbol. And then we simply just re-navigate them to the right page. So navigate, which we have not imported. So let's go up here, const location navigate is equal to use location, which comes from Wouter. And then down here we can simply make sure that we actually have these are options. They should be option, my bad. There we go. And in here with navigate, we can simply specify public routes dot user profile dot path dot replace colon username with new username. Else, so if it was not their username that changed, we don't need to reload the page, we don't need to refetch the data. That is an option if you want to do that, but an alternative solution that if you don't want to refresh and refetch data would be instead to set the user. So set user, we take the existing user and we go if the user actually exists, because remember this might be undefined. We know it's not undefined, but TypeScript does not. So we go here, if it actually provided, do something else, just go undefined. We don't have to worry then. Then here we simply go .u for the existing user, and then whatever option they updated. So here we go, option, we make that equal to the value. And there we go. Now we take this update and we implement it. And Design has this nice feature where this text area, so this text field right here, if you click on it, you can actually edit it. This is a kind of a nice feature. So instead of needing to write an edit button and create an edit page or swap inputs with edit fields and whatnot, we can all do it from just here. So let's do one, which is the username. Let's go here, we can say editable, and this will contain that if the user ID is the same as the user._ID, actually this will be user ID, not _ID, then we want to add a configuration, else we simply say false, it should not be editable. So if these two are the same, we can say onChange, which will contain E, and this will handle the update user info. passing in the available option. We say it's the username, and then we also pass in E. Now if we save this and we go to the front end, you'll notice there's a little tick here that says edit. If you click it, now you can edit this. So let's say Nick2. Username is already taken. Is Nick2 taken? Okay, let's try Nick23. There we go. So Nick23, our URL also updated. So when I press refresh, it's not going to not know where the user is, because if we try to go to Nick right now, Nick is just not found. And that's that. That's how you can update the username, at least. If you wanted to, we can change it back and whatnot. Now to change the name and the last name, it is pretty much the same thing. So here we just go editable. Note here we already check if these two are the same, so we don't have to do that check again. We just pass in an object that contains the onChange. And this time instead of username, we say first name. And we can take this whole thing and we can put it here with last name and just do last name. Now we have this. Because they don't really have a last name, it looks a little weird. But if we go here and say Bone Valley, then Bob's your uncle. If we say, okay, they're not Nick anymore, they are Nicholas, then it works. If I say refresh, boom, it's still there. I'm going to split this tutorial up into a couple parts. So in the next part, we'll actually be looking at uploading the profile photo and using it with S3 and setting all of that up. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all again in the next Meteor.js tutorial.